Hello and welcome to the Tech Partner News podcast, where we talk to leaders in the tech channel across Australia. I'm your host, Ben Moore, and today I'm joined by Kat McCrabb, founder and managing director of Brisbane-based Flametree Cyber. But first, let's hear a message from our sponsor.
There's a lot going on for Microsoft partners right now. Today's pressures, CSP program changes, compliance, security. Tomorrow's challenges, AI disruption, rising customer expectations. It's tough just keeping up, let alone getting ahead. That's where Dicker Data comes in. Australia's #1 Microsoft Cloud, Azure SMB and Copilot distributor. With 45 years experience and 28 local experts who know Microsoft inside out. They help you turn disruption into opportunity. With the right people, growth-led programs and exclusive partnerships. Make Microsoft work for you. Visit dickerdata.com.au/Microsoft.
Welcome, Kat.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thanks for joining us. Just to start, could you tell us a little bit about your background and what led to you starting Flametree Cyber, which I believe was launched relatively recently in 2023?
Yep, that's right. So when I left uni, I went straight into the federal government and was one of those really, really lucky people who went straight from university into cybersecurity. And I was there for about 3 years in a few different roles, spent some time in the technology space, spent some time doing risk and governance and policy, and also maybe 2 years doing controls implementation. And then I decided I wanted a bit of experience in prosecutions, which is really hard to get in the cyber industry. And so I made the shift over to the fraud investigations team, and that was still with government. I was really enjoyed my time in fraud and leading the team there that ran investigations and did assurance programs and some uplift work as well. It was fun to see that side of the fence, but my heart's with cyber, so I made my way back and spent a couple more years doing some compliance work and implementation of uplift before I got the tap on the shoulder to go and be the CISO for Brisbane Catholic Education, which is a non-for-profit in the education sector, as the name suggests. But I really enjoyed my time working in non-for-profit and applying that really that background that I had in cyber and rigorous frameworks and control environments to a more fluid environment, one which was a bit less prescriptive, and taking that really risk-based approach to improving maturity uplift. And so because I really enjoyed that, I thought, well, I'll go and do that for a lot of organisations concurrently and set up Flametree Cyber. But one of my other real driving forces is building cultures. And I wanted the opportunity to build an organisational culture that was separate from any other organisation culture and really strongly aligned with my values and my ways of working and the way that I like to deliver value.
We'll come back to that culture bit in a minute because it is super interesting. But just going back to compliance, which is, as I understand it, a pretty key focus for Flametree Cyber. So what is that world like at the moment? What's the state of the compliance services space? And is it changing? Is there a fundamental shift on the horizon?
We are building foundations on shifting sands. We had some really significant regulatory changes last year and across multiple pieces of legislation. I think the two that most will be familiar with is the Privacy Act, which changed the definition of personal information and what we need to protect, and it really extended the boundaries of the systems and the data that we need to protect. And then the Cybersecurity Act as well, which introduced some changes to regulatory reporting and the amount of influence or control, I suppose, the National Security Coordinator has during an incident, We've also got the Security of Infrastructure Act, which introduced a bit more rigour around risk management frameworks for critical infrastructure, and the Australian financial legislation as well, which introduced a few more controls for licensees.
So how are you staying on top of those compliance and legislative changes as you move forward if there's just so much to keep track of?
So I work quite closely with some friends who are lawyers, and we often a topic of conversation over one or two glasses of wine where we compare our notes and our understanding. Fairly active in the LinkedIn community as well. There's some really amazing insights shared through that platform. One of the things I find really fascinating about all this change is some of it's quite interrelated and some of it is not. It's sort of out on its own. And I'm viewing it as a bit of an opportunity for organisations to look at things holistically. You know, we've got multiple pieces of legislative change. What can we do across the board to implement that legislative change and make sure that we're understanding our risk posture and uplifting our cyber maturity whilst doing it? Or is this one big program of work that's being led by this need for compliance with legislation and regulation?
On the Flametree Cyber website, you call out some key customer segments, which are government agencies, critical infrastructure providers, and educational institutes. Just some really easy places to institute cybersecurity and compliance, I'd imagine. No, I mean they're tough customers. Why have you decided to take on those areas?
For exactly that reason. I like the challenge. One of the things I really enjoy is long-term problem solving. I don't like that big bang approach where you come in, deliver a program and then leave. I want to be part of a long-term approach to problem solving, seeing a maturity uplift over time, and looking at these more complex organisations with business objectives that can be quite complex and moving as well, as we've got a geopolitical and macroeconomic climate that changes, and making sure that their cyber strategy aligns with that, delivers them genuine uplift over the long term and aligns with their regulatory needs.
So I guess what you've decided to do with Flametree Cyber is not only enter one of the most complex legal and technological spaces that is cybersecurity and compliance, but take on some of the most complex and difficult customers as well. And you're doing all of this as kind of a relatively young, still growing firm. Feet first into the deep end, I guess, is what I'm saying. How have you approached that challenge of saying to people, like, yes, we're a young company, but we know our stuff?
Yeah, well, I think that lends itself to speaking about the expertise of the individual. And I feel a bit awkward, I suppose, perhaps talking about my own expertise, but 15 years in industry, working in some pretty significant environments. My very first role was with Centrelink before it was Human Services, and that was known to have the broadest technical environment in the Southern Hemisphere at the time. And then moving to BCE, where I've held that CISO role, that has roughly 100,000 user accounts over 143 different sites. So when you look at the complexity of the environments that I've worked in, it's easy to communicate that expertise. Similarly, when I look at my team, they've got expertise in the Defence Force, which again, a fairly broad environment with lots of technical complexity and political machinations. Like you've got all those machinery of government changes and again, the macroeconomic and geopolitical changes that impact defence and other organisations as well.
Let's take a quick pause to hear a message from our sponsor.
Need a Microsoft distributor to help you thrive in the AI era? Data has the proven people, programs and partnerships to modernise your practice and turn disruption into opportunity. 40 growth-led programs from onboarding and partnering, capability building and enablement, through to go-to-market campaigns. 60 plus certifications across Azure, AI, security and Copilot, plus 5 in-house Microsoft certified trainers working directly with you. Their partners say they're like an extension of their team. Make Microsoft work for you. Visit dickadata.com.au/Microsoft.
Let's go back to your time before Flametree Cyber. You said you were the CISO at Brisbane Catholic Education, not-for-profit. What did you learn in that role about what you should be offering to clients? What were the key takeaways that you got working that side that you've taken with you into Flametree?
The biggest lessons learnt from my role in the CISO chair were really understanding the organisation's objectives and risk appetite and tolerance levels. In my time in federal government, one of the highest priorities was confidentiality, whereas in the education space there was a greater emphasis on the availability. So it became this really interesting, how do we solve the problem of greater availability whilst also maintaining confidentiality and integrity, and working within the organisation's risk appetite, tolerance and statement was all part of that. And I really enjoyed the conversations that I had with legal and compliance and audit and understanding better what the organisation wanted or needed in that space and designing solutions that aligned with them. So yeah, having that sort of broader sense of problem solving was really fun and interesting for me, and bringing the team on the journey was a lot of joy as well. Great,
yeah. I think it's just amazing that you can, with a straight face, say, I really enjoyed having conversations with legal and audit, because we absolutely need people like that. I'm glad you exist.
It's unlikely that they'll listen, but if they are, I did enjoy it.
Great. And I suppose when you were a CISO, you would have had your ways of doing things. And in the other seat, providing services, you probably come across CISOs who might have different ways of doing things. How do you navigate those differences, coming in and saying, oh, I really think maybe this would be a much better way to do it, but they're like, nope, this is our way? One of the other things about being in the CISO chair is you do have service providers come to you and they want to enforce their way, and I found that quite frustrating because, well, I'm the one who has ownership of the program and the outcome, but also with all respect to those service providers, I've got the better understanding of the organisation and our culture and our tolerance and the individuals involved in this problem solving and implementation space. And so having that background in the CISO chair has given me that understanding and appreciation that I can come into an organisation and share my thoughts and my expertise and work with them to problem solve. But in the end, they know what's best for their organisation, and I want to be supportive of that. I want to have those real collegiate relationships and that joint problem solving approach, rather than coming in with a bit of a cookie cutter approach, and give them something that is uniquely tailored to their organisation and their ways of working and preferences and culture, and going to be long-term sustainable for them. You mentioned you wanted to start your own company because you were excited or passionate about building a company culture. What does that mean in an industry like cybersecurity? Because I guess company culture can mean many things, from drinks after work to posters on the walls. But when it comes to something that requires absolute accuracy and depth of knowledge, what does it mean to create a strong company culture? Yeah. We find that there's a real desire for people to bring in strong technologists and people who've had 15 years worth of experience and put them in roles where they're still really operational. And I wanted the opportunity to bring in people who are
maybe 7-8 years into their journey. They're not yet burnt out, but they've got the expertise and they're starting to feel a little bit frustrated, I suppose, with this constant need to be at the top of the game, not necessarily having the resources and supporting structures around them, not necessarily having leadership that advocate for them, but give them constantly more and more work. And I know that's not representative of every area of industry, but a lot of organisations have those challenges. We have a bit of groupthink, I think, across industry. And so by offering a slightly different work environment that allows people from a bit more of a diverse background to enter the organisation, and when we have diverse teams, we tend to lift each other. We get rid of some of that group thinking. It allows itself more to a continuous improvement model. Something that I do with my team is every month we have a workshop, we choose a topic, and we all put our brain cells together and iterate on that topic with a goal of continuously improving that particular service offering. And so introducing that diversity of thought really lends itself to having a stronger continuous improvement model and getting a better end outcome or a better process, or making things more efficient. And even efficiencies in work can result in an uplift in the team environment, because they realise, I'm not spending my time necessarily copying and pasting between templates. That piece might be automated for me, and I can spend my time thinking about the challenges that I want to spend my time problem solving, or having conversations with people that are a bit more rewarding, and building those relationships with clients that I really want to build and were my driver for entering industry, rather than coming in, solving a problem and running away.
I'm just so interested in how there's like an empathy at the core of your approach, and then whether that comes through in what we were just talking about, saying, well, I was a CISO and I understand that there are certain, they have certain needs and expectations, and I can take that on board when I work with them. Your company culture around burnout, like empathy seems to be kind of central to your approach, wrapped firmly in this extreme technical depth of knowledge. So I think that's very interesting. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Tech Partner News podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I enjoyed that.
That's it for this episode of the Tech Partner News podcast. To make sure you don't miss an episode, subscribe wherever you listen. For more news from and for the Australian Technology Channel, head over to techpartner.news.